Good morning. My name is Debi Douglass, and I'm a member of the LT Senior Services. In 2021, we had 46 nonprofit and business members. Our goal is to help the 55 plus adults by offering educational events like today's program, shred days to help properly dispose of personal documents, and our annual Aging Well Expo, which is in September. We have a website and an app for your phone for additional information. We plan to work on property tax and exemption assistance and emergency preparedness as 2022 progresses. Our next webinar is April 12th with Dr. Blake Harrison discussing carotid stenosis. He'll tell us what it is, the symptoms and treatment. And since it's a common disease among the aging and increases the risk of stroke, it should be a really great program. Today, we're talking about senior living options and thriving in retirement. So we're going to get started, but in the meantime, we'd like to welcome any LT Services members that would like to introduce themselves. Natalie will bring you in. Natalie, is there anybody else?
Yes, there's two, and I think Karen is just coming in from the library, and then we'll bring in another one.
Okay, great. Thank you. Karen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, Debbie. Thanks. I guess I'm sorry I missed the beginning. I guess Cindy's not here today. Or anyway. Thank you for including me. Thank you, Cindy and Natalie and Debbie, for everything you're doing. Yeah, just wanted to give a plug for the library. We're definitely open. You can come in and browse, and we're starting different types of programs. We've got online, so Zoom programs like this, like there's a speakers forum on Thursday. It's one of our great volunteers talking about the Blanton Museum. We have in-person programs, and then we have hybrid, in-person and Zoom, and then we have an outdoor story time every Friday at 10:30. And then we also have hotspots. So if you need internet at home, we have basically, it's a mobile hotspot you check out just like a book, and it goes off of a T-Mobile cell signal, so you can get unlimited internet access with your library card. So if you need something like that, we've been using it at home as backup internet. It's been great. So if you have a card, you can check one out. We've got a bunch. We've got a great grant. So we're really excited to be able to offer that to the community. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a great service. Yeah, to have it's like basically unlimited data.
That's awesome.
Okay. Thank you for having us and plugging the library, letting me plug the library.
Okay. Thanks so much, Karen. Okay, Anne from Be Well MD is coming in next.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Hi, Debbie.
Hi, Anne.
Nice to see you. Thank you, Natalie. I love being a part of this organization, and hopefully many of you have had the opportunity to hear Dr. Carlson speak on a few occasions on this webinar. I represent Be Well MD and Be Well Clinical Studies. So Be Well MD is a medical concierge practice. Dr. Carlson does all of his primary care visits in the home. So he just toodles around Austin, Lakeway, everywhere within the market to visit patients. He's a board certified, fellowship trained geriatrician. Our service is 24/7 access. So anytime patients need us, they call him directly or call his nurse directly, and we give service on the same day. The other service we're offering, we have just started doing clinical trials specific to seniors. So if anybody's interested in participating in a medical trial, we're running a few trials now in the market and would love anybody to join who's interested in doing that. So Be Well MD and Be Well Clinical Studies. Thank you.
It's awesome, Anne. Thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Anne.
Do we have anybody else, Natalie?
I don't see anyone else.
Okay. Well, then we'll get started with today's program. I'm going to bring on our other two panelists, David Melgar and John Mathis, and they'll introduce themselves. I'll start with myself. I am with Oasis Senior Advisors. A senior advisor is someone who helps an individual or a family look at senior living options and try to find what will be the best match for the quality of life. And so we help people from a 55 plus apartment all the way, even if it's a nursing home setting. So, and there's all the places in between that David and John and I are going to talk about now today. So David, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Of course. Thank you, Debbie. Well, it's such a pleasure to be here with you all. My name is David Melgar, and I am the Director of Community Relations here at Belmont Village Senior Living and Lakeway. And I have had the pleasure to serve our seniors across the nation through Belmont by offering, obviously, our wonderful Belmont services. Particularly here in Lakeway, we have a community that provides independent living, assisted living, and we have 2 levels of memory enrichment programming that are available to our family members. But such a pleasure to be here and happy to be part of this wonderful conference today.
Thanks, David. John, do you want to come on and introduce yourself?
Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm John Mathis. I'm with the Auberge BK. We're a memory care community, and I'm the marketing director for them. But I also come from a background of working in the industry for about 15 years and worked at all the levels of the continuum of care, from independent living all the way through nursing. My current role as a marketing director is I get to help families who are having to face this horrible disease of dementia and Alzheimer's. And it's very rewarding, but I've also come from a place of that I was there myself as a family member who suffered through this disease with his own father and grandfather. So that's kind of why I do what I do. And I'm very excited about the opportunity to just have a conversation about some of the resources and opportunities that are out there for families. So thank you for letting me be part of this.
That's awesome. Well, that's a good, let's segue then right into the fact that we want to talk about these different options. So, and this is a reminder to our participants that you can put a question into question and answers or into the chat, and Natalie will be monitoring that so we can answer any of your questions as well. But let's talk about the differences. David, do you want to start with telling us the difference between independent and assisted?
Of course. So obviously in the senior living world, you have a variety of different programs that are available to you. Obviously, we're talking about independent living and assisted living. In independent living, one of the biggest differences obviously is you have a focus on really healthy, active seniors that are looking for those hospitality services that will make essentially their lives easier. But maybe they don't necessarily require personal care or on-site health care, and they may prefer that independent living environment from that perspective. And so you have obviously very much an active group of residents that are there very much, you know, still driving on their own. They're still actively engaging in a couple of activities throughout the day in their community. They're very much active outside of that community as well. And so generally, the basic services included as part of that independent living setup is your monthly rent, and any probably other services that are added on top of that. With assisted living residences, you typically have basically an opportunity for you to enjoy a higher quality of life, whether it's receiving personal care from trained employees, and you have basically the prompt access to medical and emergency care in a residential setting. In assisted living, that typically most individuals probably more than likely are unable to live independently. So they may require assistance with activities of daily living. Those activities of daily living are things like showering, dressing, grooming, if you're starting to need some continence management support, medication management. And assisted living provides those services through basically the support of a caregiving staff, nurses that are on site within the community. If you're starting to need some housekeeping support and services, medication management, all of that is integrated into more than likely a monthly overall setup of services and amenities. And those would be typically some of the differences between independent living and assisted living.
Can we go back to independent for a minute? Because you mentioned hospitality services and amenities. Can you tell the people who are on with us what some of those are? Like, are there meals? Are there housekeeping? How does that work for independent living? Because independent sounds independent, but
yeah. So usually in a lot of the independent living communities, you have more than likely an amenity area. You have services that are kind of just situated for your comfort level. Those things can be weekly housekeeping. You may have folks coming in to launder your bed linens and towels. They might come in and do daily bed making, daily trash removal. For example, here at Belmont Lakeway, we have a beautiful movie theater. We have an outdoor pool that we use frequently that's also heated saltwater. We sit on about 15 acres of land, so you have a lot of outdoor space and a lot of those spaces that residents can use throughout the day. So those independent living communities are going to have a lot of functioning spaces for you to use. So you may be someone that is interested in comfortably leaving your apartment and reading a book and going to the library. That's an opportunity for you to use some of those amenities within the community of that independent living concept. Or you maybe want to go out on a stroll around the community. You might have some trails. You might have a pond and an observation deck that you can go out to and enjoy kind of that fresh air. So that setup is really kind of, what I would call probably a resort style kind of aspect to day-to-day life, so that independent living individual can go out and continue to enjoy their life and enjoy those amenities that are provided for them.
And I would say that most offer 1 to 3 meals a day as part of their rent. So that's something for those of us who are tired of cooking.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's an important thing about independent living to consider is, there's senior apartments out there, but that's not really independent living. Independent living communities, they're going to have a dining room. And kind of to piggyback on what David was saying, when someone is looking to move into an independent living area, it's more of a want than a need. I don't want to cook my own meals. I don't want to do my own laundry. I don't want to clean my own house. I want to go to activities. I want to have a pool. It's the amenities. It's the whole resort experience, like David said. That's why someone would be looking at the investment into an independent living community and what the reward is for that return, what they put into it. So, yeah.
So, John, tell us about the difference then, because we talked about independent and assisted. Tell us about memory care.
So memory care, there's a misconception that memory care is a higher level of care. It's really not. It's an assisted living that specializes in taking care of loved ones that have a cognitive decline or disability of some sort, dementias. It's not a psych hospital, so there's not psych diagnosis there. But the biggest way to kind of explain the difference is how much of direction does the resident need. Someone in memory care, true memory care resident, they can't live alone any longer. They require direction. They're not able. I was reading last night and I was like, yeah, that makes perfect sense, where a assisted living resident can still make their own decisions. They still have the cognitive ability to make financial decisions, make healthcare decisions. Someone in memory care, they can't do that anymore. They require their loved one, their parent of attorney, their spouse. Someone has to step in and make those decisions, financial and healthcare, for them. A memory care resident, doesn't have the ability to just drive and go out and do the things in the community anymore. They have to be directed. We have to direct them to activities. We have to give them redirection to meals. There's a lot of of cues to be able to navigate through their day. That's important in memory care. The days have to be structured. The routine has to be the same from day to day to day, where with an assisted living, maybe not. Maybe somebody can have some random, I don't want to do this today, I'm gonna do something different. Where in a true memory care resident, they're not gonna be able to, you know, we're set up, we have a secure door. So our residents aren't able to go, they can leave with family members, but they can't walk out the door on their own. So it's very secure. Because lots of times families have residents that will walk out of the door in the middle of the night. I know my own grandfather tried to leave our house several times throughout the day before we finally had to find a community for him. And so, you know, and there's a significant memory impairment or progression of memory impairment there as well. So there's a little bit of difference, but it's not nursing. We're not a nursing level of care. We're an assisted living level of care, but we're an assisted living that specializes in memory care, helping those loved ones who have Alzheimer's and other related dementias.
Tell me a little bit about the activities that are more specialized towards someone with a memory or a confusion as opposed to physical.
What we do here, which is very exciting, we do the Montessori method. And that's a newer method of memory care, but it's catching on. I know I went to a couple of seminars that the state was giving on. So it's catching on throughout the state, which is exciting to see. And that really focuses on, you know, what the approach is really is focused on how they do something, not what they do. I mean, what is it they can do, but how are we going to be able to help them do more? And to explain that one, we have an architect who maybe he can't draw those straight lines anymore, but he likes to draw. So we get him in an art program where he's painting now. He's actually blossomed and he's gotten more excited because of that social interaction, those activities. We didn't cure him. We didn't, you know, we just got him more stimulated to be able to get some basic muscle memory and he can rely on that to figure out how he's going to succeed. We have ladies who are drive their own committees, the decorating committees. They're the ones that put the flyers together, decorations throughout the community. We even have one of my favorite experiences. We have a little country store for our residents. Now they don't have to buy things, everything's free in there, but we have a lady, a resident that manages it for us. And when it's open, she'll be outside and she'll say, hey, do you want to come in my store? It's all free. And she's so proud of what she's doing. And it goes down to is, you know, we all want to have that, still have that sense of purpose and quality in our life. And that's what the Montessori approach really focuses on, making sure that we don't lose that sense of self-worth and that we still have a purpose. And that's kind of what the activities are built around, is that concept. And they're very structured. They have the same time every day. You'll have the same activities. There may be some variation, like, you know, one month we may have, it may be the Asian Studies month. You know, this month we're studying Ireland. So there's different things that we'll study on the themes, but the residents know that each time of the day, this is where activities are going to be, and we'll help direct them there as well. And so that's kind of what we do around based around activities. I know that David's building does something I'm really excited about. There's like a bridge from assisted living towards memory care, and David probably wants to talk about that. Is the Circles of Friends program.
Yeah, and I think the Circle of Friends program too, David, a lot of times we have couples, and so one person in the couple has, you know, a dementia diagnosis or something, and or a cognitive impairment, and then the other person does not. And so you have a program that kind of can help keep that couple together, so to speak.
And I'll interrupt before David starts talking, but when I first saw that, I went back to when I was selling independent living and thought, how many couples could that type of program have benefited in the community I was working with at the time, where we had one spouse did not have a cognitive issue, dementia, and the other one did, but the spouse that didn't couldn't be doing the activities that she wanted because she was trying to make sure her husband was taken care of. I thought, what a great resource to have for families.
Absolutely. So, you know, it's interesting, the Circle of Friends program and what it's done to the senior living concept. Obviously, we've shared independent living and assisted living. Typically, obviously, independent living tends to be a standing alone building, and then you have an assisted living community that has that attached memory care. So one of the things that we're starting to see as the aging process is starting to develop in America is that we're starting to see a lot of folks in a special niche where they're either starting some early memory loss, or they have a diagnosis of dementia or Alzheimer's, but it's within that mild to moderate stage of things. So in assisted living, typically for someone that might be experiencing that mild to moderate cognitive impairment, you may remain in assisted living, or sometimes you may move into a secured memory care, but sometimes that's happening either way too soon, or you don't have the proper cognitive abilities to be met. And so what Circle of Friends really has done, it has created an atmosphere and an environment for those that are experiencing that early mild moderate cognitive impairment, so that their needs are being able to essentially be met. The beauty aspect of also the Circle of Friends is that you still remain in the assisted living, independent living concept of the community. We're just really providing that hands-on support if you're starting to need those frequent reminders, if you need prompting, redirection. And we base our programming based on a therapeutic perspective. So we focus on what we call the 6 domains of your brain. So it falls under the category of critical thinking, mathematics, language, memory, body, and movement. And out of that, we have created essentially an opportunity for residents to continue to thrive and participate in activities that are provided to you 7 days a week, 8 hours of the day, with the purpose to stimulate the brain, give you kind of like what John said, also that sense of purpose, give you those opportunities for success and social interaction, and most importantly, really give you a foundational structure for a routine for that overall typical day that you have, and really personalize each individual's day-to-day based on how we can engage them in those therapeutic activities. And that's essentially what the Circle of Friends is really focusing on, is that special niche for those individuals in that mild to moderate cognitive impairment.
Awesome. So we have 3 levels that we've talked about: independent, assisted, and memory care. I'd like to kind of go back a little bit. Actually, let's address all 3 at once. What are y'all's thoughts about what are the benefits of entering any of those levels, and why? And I would say that socialization and the support are immensely important in terms of even independent living, right? You know, so that there's people, families that, so let's talk a little bit about that from any level of senior living. What's the benefit, and how do you see socialization in there?
Well, that's where the magic happens, is socialization. And I'll use that, don't use that term loosely. I think we all have experienced isolation these past couple of years, and we realize how important socialization was, and we may have taken it for granted prior to the COVID. But I remember we had a resident that we were moving in. This was an independent living, kicking and screaming. She did not want to come. The family basically were dragging her down. And she'd been with us for about 6 weeks, and she came and talked to me. And she said, "John, I did not realize how isolated I really was until I got here, and how it was a slow process. It wasn't like, close the door, I'm isolated now. It happened over time." And how she had let herself get so, I don't want to say lonely. And when she got in the community, she looked at me and she goes, "This is the best decision that we ever made. This is awesome," because she made new friends. She had new experiences. She had a whole new support network around her. You know, and I think what happens when people are thinking senior living, even these days, somebody said this earlier in the conversation, it was from home to the nursing home. There's no intermediate step. And we think of the nursing home as that was when we were children. We walked in, they were dungeons, they were horrible. It was just depressing. But that's not what's out there now with this whole continuum of care that we have, with the different levels of support. So you'll find that niche of what you want through the socialization. And even in memory care, when you think, well, they don't remember. No, the socialization occurs. I have families that say, "My mom's not social. She's not going to come out." And they show up a week later and they go, "What happened?" She's now doing things. I get excited when I see new residents find their niche, what they want to be part of. And I know David has that same experience in his communities, because that's what you see throughout my experience in the profession. I've seen that as well. I think the struggle part of it is, though, is the caregivers, they don't realize what's going on with their loved ones, and they don't realize what's happening to them. The caregiver stress is another factor that plays into it. You know, one of the families told me that my dad did me the best gift when he was able to move in to the community, because now we don't worry about my dad anymore. And so it's a tremendous thing. I didn't mean to steal your thunder, Dave, but go ahead. I didn't mean to jump in on you.
No, not at all. I think I absolutely am with you in that. And, you know, the biggest thing is for sure that socialization and how much opportunity it gives for folks to thrive. And I think one of the second biggest things when we're focusing on that assisted living concept as well, and even for those communities that have an independent living with that assisted living licensure, you know, I think as a family member and someone who's moving their loved one into a senior living community as a whole, you're going to have that peace of mind knowing, especially if you're moving into an assisted living community, that is going to keep an eye on your loved one, that's going to have those licensed nurses that are going to be there 24/7. It's going to give you an opportunity to have that peace of mind knowing that you're moving your loved one into a community that's going to have that safety aspect to their day-to-day lives. So on top of that socialization, really that safety net of you continuing to have that proper support around you is going to be huge. And you know, obviously, one of the things that you know you find more and more is as great as it is to maybe stay at home, it starts becoming more expensive, and so people end up, you know, moving away from staying at home with home caregivers because it starts becoming expensive. So now you have a concept, a senior living concept, that allows you to really have a more affordable aspect to providing not only care on site, providing that licensed nurse that's going to have that 24/7 side over your loved one, obviously with activities, the socialization piece. Obviously, those opportunities are all going to be combined together, and it will give, obviously, that peace of mind knowing that you are that your loved one is in a safe environment.
Yeah, and my goal when I'm working with families is I want them to feel comfortable enough that they can go on a vacation. They don't have to worry about their loved one. If they feel comfortable, if they can go out of town and not stress about, oh my God, what's happening with my loved one back at home. And when we try to take care of a loved one in the house, or we're helping, you know, trying to keep them at home, how many family members aren't able to go do stuff on their own because they're constantly worried about, oh my gosh, what's mom going to do on her own in the house? You know, it's a safety issue, but having that safety net, that caregiver support around your loved one in a community, as I always tell people, I want you to feel comfortable enough that you can go on a 2-week vacation and not have to worry about your life. And I think that's really truly the service we provide, is we give that peace of mind to our families. They don't have to worry about what their loved one's doing.
I have a story from a long time ago when I worked for a hospice in Florida, and I was on the team that worked with assisted living facilities, and we brought a woman on for failure to thrive because she was losing weight and dementia symptoms. But at the exact same time, the family moved her to an assisted living facility, and she was off hospice services in less than 6 weeks because she didn't have dementia. It wasn't failure to thrive. Her husband had passed away, and he was the driver. And so she sat home all the time alone, and the family went to visit her once a week. But that's the only interaction and socialization she got. And she did not like to eat alone. So she wasn't eating. So the combination was terrible, right? So it imitated failure to thrive, and it imitated dementia. And within a couple of weeks of being at the assisted living facility, she was on every activity, every bus that was going somewhere. She was at every meal, and she was thriving. And so that for me was something that was like such a wake-up call, like in terms of how isolation and depression can really affect you know, especially our aging population where, you know, they may not drive, they may not, and, you know, families are doing the best they can. And like John, I had experience with my parents and grandparents. And really, even when we thought we were trying to do the right thing by keeping them at home, very often it was not the right thing. Home care is a great thing, but it's a one person. So you don't have a team of people. And then the care, a lot of the caregiving is still put on the spouse or the adult children. And I think that that's something. So what would you guys say to somebody who's like watching us now and hearing us talk about this, about the role that guilt plays? Because as children and spouses, there's a lot of guilt attached with it. It feels like giving up. Now we all
Exactly, and that's in that conversation I have experienced firsthand myself, where I felt guilty. You know, my dad raised me, I put him through hell, and that was my turn to return the favor and help him in the end of his life. After my mom passed, he went through the grief and depression. It led to some dementia later on, but you know, we thought we were doing the right thing, bringing him closer to the family and having him living at home, and we could do it. But what we don't realize, and what families don't see because they're too close to it, is that role changes. You quit being the child and you turn into a caregiver, and it can damage and hurt relationships by going in. I've seen that firsthand many times, not only my firsthand from my own family, but other families that I have helped. And it's that guilt of, I can't do this, I failed. And I always remind people, you're not giving up anything, you're just getting some help. And especially when we're talking about dementia, you can't do it alone. You can't. And you've got to have a safe environment. You actually are failing your loved one if you allow them to stay in an unsafe environment at home, and that you're going to damage your family relationships, health. And I think that's because, you know, we get in a stage of denial because we get so tunnel vision and focused on, you know, we get laser focused on, I've got to get my mom a bath today. She's not going to like it. Or my mom is incontinent. And oh my gosh, she had an accident and it's just horrible. And, you know, those types, you know, it's just, I've seen it firsthand, watched what happened to be a mother and a daughter, or a father and a daughter, or father and son, where it's just, it destroys it. You know, not only physically, but mentally. You know, the caregiver stress is extremely real. And I think the part that's common and one of the strongest emotions we all feel when we're doing it is that guilt of failure, a sense of failure. I'm guilty because I can't do this anymore.
So when do you decide, David, speak to this maybe, how do people make that decision, like time to, you know, do they look at quality of life? Do they look at, you know, what is it? What are those determining factors, would you say, even for independent living? Like what makes you say, okay, it is time?
Absolutely. So I've kind of have set up a little guideline, and it's typically 8 categories of when it's time for someone to look into some senior living options. And I would say these are some telling signs that you really can't afford to miss, you know, for maybe someone who is starting to show signs of memory loss. Maybe are you starting to see whether they're mixing up medications? Are they forgetting to take their meds or running out of their medications? Are they taking too much or too little? And are they having a difficult time to correctly order those medications? So that's probably a really important category to focus on. Are they exercising poor nutritional habits? Are they having an increase in difficulty in performing daily activities, such as you're starting to notice that they're showering less frequently and personal hygiene is starting to suffer? Are they wearing multiple clothes, wearing the same clothes on multiple days? You know, are they experiencing frequent falls? Is that home environment conductive, you know, set up to be successful if you are having frequent falls, you know, whether it's having stairs and steps in the home, not having enough help nearby when the fall occurs. You know, sometimes you also start beginning to experience things like becoming fearful of living alone. Obviously, a big piece that we highlighted was experiencing the lack of socialization, you know, or are they experiencing that? And are they even in other aspects, difficulty of maintaining the house and the yard? Maybe the laundry, maybe the housekeeping is starting to become a burden. Even yard work may start becoming a physically demanding. And then maybe they're starting to resort out of living only in a few rooms in the home. Those would be some important aspects of what you might be able to see, you know, when you have those telling signs of possibly it's time to make a decision.
So I have worked in communities, and now, of course, as an advisor, I work with all the communities, and I help people decide which ones to look at and help them compare. Often the comparison can be difficult for people. We talk about like ratios, caregivers to, you know, resident ratios. I personally always tell people, ask more questions, because what does that caregiver do? You could have a place that says it's 1 to 5, but that caregiver could be doing the laundry, the cooking, the cleaning, the everything, as well as the caregiving. So I always tell people, you have to ask, like, you have to dig a little deeper. What kinds of things do you encourage people to ask when they're trying to compare places, like your place to another place, or y'all have worked at different places? So what would you say were some good comparison questions?
You want to go ahead and answer this, John, and I'll go after you?
No, you go ahead.
Yeah. So very similar to kind of what I highlighted, I have also another 8 categories that I tend to kind of highlight with family members. And, you know, are you looking, you know, an encouragement to look at staffing? You know, do they have ongoing training, background checks? Do they have licensed nurses? There's a category of food services. Are they offering those 3 nutritional meals? Do they have a menu with choices? Do they allow special diets to be accommodated? You know, what do their activities look like? Do they have organized daily activities? Do they have a dedicated activity program director on staff? You have personal services. Do they have transportation, housekeeping, laundry? Do they have a hair salon on site? Do they have concierge? And also you want to look at the atmosphere. Do you have friendly, helpful staff? Do their residents appear comfortable? You know, is there a fitness activity center? You know, what are the options for individual residences? You may also look at what personal care looks like. You know, do they have, like I said earlier, do they have those licensed nurses? Do you have medication management? Do they have memory programming available to you so that you're able to age in place? You know, the safety aspects of the building. What are the construction standards? You know, is there a fire safety system? Is it senior friendly designed? Is there an emergency response system to that? You know, what does their licensure look like within that assisted living community? And then typically, you know, what is the setup of the community that you're moving into? Do they have contracts? Are they a lease or they are buying? You know, what are their entry fees? Do they offer refunds? Is there a discharge policy? So those are typically some of those 8 categories that I like to kind of help family members in the process of comparing, you know, staffing, food service, activities, personal services, the atmosphere, the personal care services available to you, the safety, and contracts and costs.
Yeah, I agree with what David's saying. You know, one of the things when I'm working with families too is, of course, what's important to me is not necessarily important to the family members. And I always, you know, try to encourage them to come up with a tool that I used when I was looking for family is, you know, I put together a matrix. What was important to my dad? What was important to my sister, brother, and me? You know, and look for those things. And actually, you know, go look at 2 to 3 communities. Don't just go look at one community. You need to go out there and go look to different communities and see what's available, because you'll walk in and you'll know right away, oh, this looks good. This is what I'm looking for. And you'll walk in and go, no, this isn't it. But one of the things kind of talking into that David brought up was about the staff and the training. That's extremely important. And then also just observation, how are they interacting with the residents? Are they talking at the residents? Are they talking to the residents? Is it an interruption to that staff member's day, or are they engaged? When you see things like a caregiver that says, you know what, we just washed your hair, let's go to the salon and use a dryer and get that blow dried. The caregiver didn't do that extra step, or a maintenance guy who knows that one of the residents really likes to be shaved will take him down to the barber chair and give him a shave. A maintenance guy giving a resident a shave. Now, that's the type of things that really stand out when you're looking at different communities. But I do encourage people, when they're on doing visits and they're visiting communities, when you're out and walking the property and you're seeing things, ask questions. If if medication management's important to you, then I would tell you, talk to that person that's responsible for passing out meds. Ask them questions to see if they really understand what they're doing and do they really know what they're doing. And that will give you a sense of comfort that knowing, okay, these guys know what they're doing. When they say they're going to be able to deliver, they will. Now, not everybody's perfect. That's not what I'm saying, but that's the big key of it as well. And then look at the building. Is it being maintained properly? I mean, if you see telltale signs of water stains in the ceiling, I've been into communities that have not been maintained, and it's very obvious. Well, wait a minute, if they're not going to take care of the building, how are they going to take care of my loved one? And a little pet peeve of mine is, and this sounds silly and people are going to laugh, but I go check the bathroom now. The public bathroom. Is it clean, well stocked, taken care of, or I walked in, is it, obviously not been taken care of? Well, that's the maintenance part of it, which is extremely important. Is how if they don't take the time to take care of their building, how are they going to take time to take care of my loved one? So those types of things to look at as well. But more importantly, we can have a brand new, bright and shiny building, but if our care is not up to it, that building doesn't mean anything. So really, I tell people to focus in on how is the care staff interacting with the residents, and that tells you really a lot about the differences between the communities. And I've been in several over the years, and I have seen places, it is night and day. It stands out, and I really don't appreciate it when I hear a care staff talking at the residents. That's just not right. We are guests in our residents' house, and we will treat them like we would treat our best family member.
I agree. I think that when I talk to my clients about what they're looking for, it does start with what's most important. But the next step is, how does it feel when you go in that building? And your parent or your loved one, you know them better than anybody. So is it a place they're going to fit in? Because one place is not right for everyone.
Right.
So it's really important to go and get that feeling. And like you said, does the staff have a sense of teamwork? Is your executive director hands-on if you're short-staffed, or are they in their office not, participating? Right. That makes a big difference. And I think that where you see the best teamwork, where you see the happiest residents, where you see the happiest family members. I tell my clients, if there's a family member visiting, go up to them and ask them questions and talk to them. Because those are the people who are going to best tell you how it is there now. I get a lot of people who are going, well, my best friend's mom lived somewhere 5 years ago. And I'm like, that's great, but that was 5 years ago. Let's find out what it's like now. And of course we're in and out of your buildings as a team. And so as advisors, we have a little bit more of a finger on the pulse, but in general, I feel like clients need to understand that things change over 5 years, people change, dynamics change. So I always say, no, let's find out who's happy now and how it's going now, because.
Well, you don't know how many move-ins that I've had over the years where a prospect has stopped a family member in the parking lot and asked them questions And so it's important that we build those relationships with our family members, because they're going to be our best salespeople by walking out and telling them like it really is. I mean, I'm going to be telling them all the right and wonderful things. But the family member is going to tell them, they're going to go, oh, well, that's really the way it is. And several times I've had families move into communities that I work with because they stopped a family member out in the parking lot. So that would be something I would suggest you do too. See family members, ask them.
Absolutely.
They'll tell you.
Absolutely. Great. I don't know, Natalie, do we have any questions that we can come in with now, or?
I don't see any right now, but if anybody has any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat, or you can also use the Q&A feature as well.
Okay.
There's a hand raised by the last name Burdette there. I don't know if you see that, Natalie.
There's a hand raise. Where are you seeing that?
I do see it. I'm going to go ahead and allow. Whoop, no, they're not anymore. Okay.
There is a question in the chat.
Is there a comprehensive list of senior facilities in the Austin area? I would say that there are resource guides. There are you can go online, but just to look at a list on your own is not going to give you as much information as you would hope it would. So I think that I would say that if you can find a list, probably on a government website, I would assume like licensing, or in a senior resource guide, I would still say try to, get a little bit of help narrowing down, unless you're in a very, small area that you're looking. Like if you were looking in Lakeway, there, you could probably hone in on those. But
And Debbie, that's why I like a service like Oasis, is that they provide to their clients where y'all have firsthand knowledge of what's available in the area. And it really is a resource to use, that you don't have to just blindly go around town hitting. It can be overwhelming to try to do it on your own, because I tried to do it on my own before I got in the industry. And I really like the companies like Oasis that does help helps them give advice to narrow down, because y'all know the communities.
and we're local, and we're in the building.
Y'all can pay me the commission for that commercial later on.
Actually, we're free to the clients, so we're just a free service for them to use. I mean, you guys will pay us if we place.
That's right.
But honestly, it's true. It's a difficult situation for sure. And when you just look at a list, it's very hard to know who has availability if you need it right away, who has the care you need, who has the right licensure that you need, who has.
Yes, exactly. That licensure, I want to go back to that real quick, because David mentioned that what the people should be looking for. If you're looking for a specific level of care, assisted living or memory care, ask to see their license. Make sure they are available to do what they're telling you they're able to do. If it's a type A assisted living and you need a type B assisted living, well, you're going to set yourself up for failure.
Absolutely.
So that's why look at the licensure is very important as well. Sorry.
And
No, that's a great point, an absolutely great point. David alluded to, we should have gone into detail. You're right.
And I was going to say that's a perfect highlight, John, because, also one really, really important thing that I think you'll have that's going to be success for you to find the right community for you is the community relations person that is meeting with you, giving you that educational experience so that you know what you're tapping into. How well-rounded are you, getting to know the community. So finding those opportunities where you're asking those questions, is huge. I know I 100% know that John and I do a really good job of, highlighting those educative aspects when we're highlighting, whether we're a type A or whether we're a type B. So that's a huge, huge important aspect as you're visiting and touring communities.
Yeah, because remember, David and I have a huge responsibility to the families. Now, I do have the responsibilities of my company, and I have goals that I have to meet. That's being said, more importantly, when someone walks in my door, I have a huge responsibility to that family member to give them the right information so they can make an informed decision. And I'll be one of the first ones to tell them, hey, this isn't going to fit what you're needing. Because that's who we are. We're more of, if I do my job right and give that information right, if we're the right fit, I don't have to sell anything because they understand what we are able to, what need we're going to be able to meet. And so I think, David, you said that if you walk in and you feel like, is that person really educating you? That's exactly, that's perfect way to say that, because you don't want to be sold anything. You want to be educated so that you can make your own decisions. And if you feel like you're being pressured into something or sold something, maybe that little feeling you have, maybe you start to listen to it and say, maybe this isn't the right place for me. Because they're having to cover up something if they're having to pressure you into doing something.
Senior living is all about quality of life. It's care. It's somebody's well-being. It's your loved one's well-being. And so that should never be taken lightly. And that should always be the focus point. And we all know that, businesses are businesses and all are not created equal. So it is definitely a big decision for people who are, who are trying. And then let's get into cost a little bit. When we're talking about these places, we're talking about private pay. So we are talking about thousands of dollars a month. So not only is it your loved one's well-being, but it's also a huge chunk of money. And so it's an incredibly difficult, important decision that is on individuals and family members. And so I think that's why we do these presentations, right? Is because we want people to really be well educated in this, and we want people to understand, what's available, but also how to go about finding it and having success, so that because we don't want people moving and moving and moving, because that's not good for anybody. So I think that's it. It looks like maybe we've got another question.
Yeah, we've got two more in Q&A.
Okay, see, assistance in finding services in other cities. Where and how do you find these organizations? So, oh, it's gone. So I would say that so places like Oasis are a franchise, and we do have offices in other areas that we can talk to you in the Austin area, but also transfer you to and link you to a place in another area in any part of the country. And that being said, if that's not the case, we should have enough resources in our healthcare community and in our senior living community to find you help wherever. So if you hit one of us up, we should be able to help you in another area, because we're all connected.
Yeah, speaking of that, Debbie, John, and David, would all of y'all mind putting your contact information in the chat for everyone?
Sure.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Yes, because certainly reach out to us for anything. I mean, I'll help link them to home care, to moving services. Like, we're all basically here to help. So.
And then there's one more question. It says, what is the difference between type A and type B?
I can take that one on. So basically, in the state of Texas, you have two types of assisted living communities. The type A basically is telling you that at any given point in time that your loved one is living at that community, they must be able to self-evacuate on their own. And they're also limited to the type of care that they're providing. So if you know that you're going to be moving into a type A, if your need for care changes in the future, where maybe things start becoming more hands-on, or you are maybe heading in the direction where mobility starts becoming an issue, more than likely you're going to make another move. So that is the focus of that type A. The type B, essentially you have the proper staffing to help those individuals that are unable to evacuate. You have the proper staff to help those individuals, and you have the capacity to provide basically a higher level of care, meaning it's the opposite of that type A, where you have that hands-on support, or you can do for example, 1 or 2 person transfer support, or that hands-on of the activity of daily living support. But mainly more important is you have the proper staffing to help evacuate those when in need.
That's that's the best definition. And I would just say that it is a level of care, because a lot of, if you're a type A, you may not be able to help with certain things. And if that's what your loved one or yourself needs, then like you would be having to move again rather soon. And that's not the answer. So thanks, David. That was a good answer to that question. All right, well, we don't have any other questions right this second. What do you guys, anything else you all want to add that you think that?
Yeah, I'd like to just add real quick. You talked about the finances of the things, but for family members, don't wait until it's time to move to get your power of attorneys done or all your legal documents done. Many times families, especially coming into memory care, would not have even thought about doing that. By then it's too late to get that done, because now that member doesn't have the cognitive ability to sign documents. So try to get that knocked out earlier than later. Have that conversation, not all at once, but have that conversation with your loved ones. What do y'all want? What do y'all want me to do? I want to be here to help you. You may hear things, well, you want me to die? No, I just need to know where the information is. So in an emergency, I can put my hands on it. And in an emergency, I can help out. I'll share a personal experience with y'all. My mom passed away. My dad was in no condition to tell me where anything is. And we had no idea where any of the wills were. We had no idea where the wishes were, what my mom's wishes were. It was a horrible experience to go through, not having a plan. We had a resident in our independent living area. I love it. He goes, "This is my day after folder." And he opened it up and he had everything written down. He had copies of all the wills, copies of power of attorney. Everything was all together so that when in case something happened, his family knew exactly where to go and do that. Unfortunately, as we get aged and our health declines, we're going to need to lean on our kiddos to make some of these decisions for us. So have those documents put together prior so it's ready, so there's not any scramble at the end. Get a good elder care attorney to help you advise you on your finances and maybe some trusts that need to be put together, those types of things, so that you have a plan and you're ready. Because waiting for a crisis, making decisions at crisis time is never a good thing.
I agree.
And what John said is huge, because you definitely find a lot of people, often making decisions right at the last minute. So if you're in a place where you can start visiting communities now and come up with your top 3 choices, how even better of a perfect opportunity you have, that you have a pretty good sense of where you would like to have your future residents in that senior living concept.
I agree. I have sometimes people call and they're like, "Well, I hate to bother you right now because we're probably a couple of years out. We just wanted to know." And I was like, it's not a bother. That's actually fine, because we want you to know. We want you to know what you're saving for. We want you to know, what type of place you want to be going to. Like, those are all great planning mechanisms. So I think we would all agree we would rather do the tour now or have the conversation now than when somebody's in total crisis, for sure. I hope everybody's finding this to be helpful and useful. Yeah, so, and I would say too that, if you have a loved one and their care needs are increasing, or they have a dementia issue and they really do live on, less than 2,000 a month, and it's becoming more and more of a crisis for them to be with family or at home, we can also link you with people who specialize in Medicaid approval and applications and things like that. And sometimes that's the choice. And again, to take the guilt off of the table, if you're doing what you need to do to get your family member, linked to the care they need, then that's, then that's what you need to do. So there's a lot of resources out there that I think that the more people know, the better plan they can make. What's the turnaround time like if you all have availability? How long, if somebody does, let's say they're coming out of rehab and suddenly the doctor's like, oh yeah, you can't go home, and the family's like, what? What do you guys see as a turnaround time in terms of getting somebody in? What
Normally it's about 2 or 3 days to a week for AL or memory care. IL maybe quicker. We have to have written orders from a doctor to be moved in, and so the delay that I'm finding throughout the years is how fast can we get those orders written and returned back to us. If it's coming from rehab, it's usually pretty easy. There are doctors there can sign the orders, and that's a much faster transition. Someone coming from home, that'll take 3 or 4 days, because then we have to get the doctor's office to complete the orders and get them back to us, get their history of physicals, do the assessments, and do it that. We don't like to do the emergency admits. Those can happen faster, but really to do it right, it's going to be 3 or 4 days.
And you all send out a nurse to do an assessment, both of you, I'm assuming?
Yes.
That's required, yes.
Yes.
We all have to fall under the state regs. The state of Texas regulates assisted living, and there are regulations that we have to follow. Everybody has to follow the same regs. So.
And I would agree to with John. I in particular have had actually several opportunities where I've had folks in rehab or where they're in the process of discharging, where maybe the family came at 10 o'clock in the morning. We got all of the paperwork ready, and they were moving in at 7 o'clock at night. So I have had those experiences, and they're possible. It's a lot of jam pack of information and assessments and all of that. But those are some examples of some last minute situations that do happen often, but you don't want to be there.
Well, some people, though, I get questions sometimes, they're like, oh, is there a waiting list of like a year and a half for independent living or assisted living or memory care? And I'm like, very rarely is that the case for most.
It depends upon how picky you want to be. So you find that right community, but then you want this exact apartment. And so I always tell people, I say, widen your choices a little bit. Don't narrow it down. I want a corner apartment facing the east on the 3rd floor with, 2-bedroom, crown molding, those types of things. There can be some things that they get real specific. I always tell people that that's going to extend your waiting time, because if that apartment's purely occupied, you're going to have to wait for a different, change of condition. And who knows when that's going to be. Widen your options, be able to look at and see if the community is willing to say, okay, once we have you moved in, you'll have an internal wait list that allows you to move to that apartment when it becomes available. But let's go ahead and let you enjoy the benefits of living in a community while you're waiting for that apartment. And several communities will do that. I mean, that's very common. They'll allow the residents to move in and have an internal wait list.
That came up with my mom, and not that she believed any of us, but just saying. But just because it's your own family does not mean all your years of experience. And
oh gosh, no.
But that came up, and so the internal wait list is often quicker. People, if once you're in, your team will move you up and into the unit you really wanted a lot sooner than outside. But I think most of us think that the opposite, right? I think a lot of people
Right,
don't.
yeah, they don't realize that those residents have a priority over somebody from outside.
Right.
And I've had folks on a wait list get mad at me when they didn't get the apartment they wanted because somebody from internal had it, even though they were told, hey, you understand, you're still behind the people that live here. Why don't you go ahead and move in? Several times we had told this woman, please move in. We can get you in, get you in there quicker. And she didn't believe us. And then when that apartment was, and of course, all the residents in the community, not just in your community, but in terms of community, general community out in the world, they all talk in the small town, so everybody knew everybody's business. So she knew when that apartment was opened up and resold to another resident. So yeah, that's the important thing to remember is that yes, generally the residents that are in the community have priority over someone from outside the community as well.
Okay, is that your experience too, David?
Yes, pretty much. You know, and I'll give you kind of an example. Typically, in our independent living part of our community, we tend to have very limited availability. So what we have seen over the last 3 years since we opened up the community is that a lot of my independent living residents are moving into my assisted living temporarily until an independent living unit comes available, because you can upgrade or downsize and you have that priority as an internal resident. The other aspect to that also, not all units are essentially counted for. You know, everyone has a particular floor plan that they're interested. So I do have some external folks on the wait list. And so I think as you're asking those questions of what a potential wait list may look like at the community that you're touring, is really understanding what that policy or what their overall setup of the wait list looks like, because it may be very different across the board. For us, obviously, we have that external wait list, but we have also that internal wait list. So there's a process to that. And so we try our best to try to help individuals understand what that looks like and how quickly they might be able to move into that unit that they're waiting for.
And as an advisor, I generally email community relations and admissions staff directly and ask those questions for my clients, so we have a heads up on, you know, if you're full or, you know, you have openings coming up in a month, so that I'm not sending people who need something immediate on a wild goose chase. So, but I do think that that's it's something that most people, you know, just don't know about waiting lists and that kind of thing. So that was good. Thank you guys for that. Anything else that you all want to, I don't see other questions. So is there anything else you all want to cover? Like, do you feel that you would want somebody that we haven't said yet, but you wish somebody had said to you when you were looking, or you recognize that families are going through it?
No. I mean, we go back to the guilt thing. That's going to be something that has to be addressed, and being able to understand that you're not giving up, you're getting help. And that's usually, the guilt usually hits around the memory care, assisted living. Usually someone who's moving into an independent living, they're moving there because they want to move there, because they don't want to do something. The more, the higher levels, there's a need that has to be met, and that family member can't meet that need anymore. And that's where that guilt comes in. And they think that they're going to the old folks home, and they don't realize, no, the socialization your loved one's going to get, it's going to be much better experience than what you have in your mind, what you think it's going to be.
Let's talk a little bit about COVID, because that's just been a 2-year roller coaster, I think. And I think that there are participants probably watching that are wondering, if my loved one moves in somewhere, can I visit them now? You know, because we all know there was, you know, a shutdown and we're trying to keep our elderly loved ones safe. But, you know, I think now the questions I hear sometimes is, so where are we now? Like, and what happens, you know, when the numbers go up and down? What are y'all's thoughts about that? I mean, I think that in some ways people who were already in buildings, you know, when COVID hit, were better off because they had staff and they had support, and they, you know, they had that, they still had some level of socialization. But I do know that from a family perspective, it's a little bit scary, right? To have your loved one somewhere and you can't visit them, and, you know, you're trying to see through a window, and there's just a lot going on there. So what are you all seeing now with the regulations as well as with your companies? What are you seeing now in terms of that for families to be looking at? Is
You know, I think
visitation?
a lot of that's regulated by the state in terms of, but I don't think we'll ever get back to the window visits again. I hope we don't ever go back to that. We do allow visitors to come in. We ask them to stay with their family members. We're still trying to control their access to other areas. But yes, I mean, I've seen my own wife wouldn't take my mother-in-law to the emergency room during COVID because she was afraid she would not be able to see her mom.
Mm.
And so we had to get through that and talk about that. But I just think we've learned that the isolating seniors is not the right thing to do. And that we've got to come up with better options in the future. But I do believe, right, no matter what, that there'll always be designated essential caregivers that will have access to their family. You know, and especially, you know, I felt very strongly during COVID, and you hear the horror stories of loved ones who are passing away and couldn't go see their mom who was on hospice and was actively passing. We can't get back there. We got to figure out better ways to do this through testing our employees, making sure that when they're screened properly. If you have a resident that's showing signs, get the resident tested. If they have to, you know, in their apartment, you know, kind of quarantine them there for a little bit. But I think our experience over these past couple of years has taught us some valuable lessons about what we need to do and what we can do and what we shouldn't do.
Absolutely. And what I would say for us, and I think for me personally too, I had actually both sets of my grandparents move into senior living in the midst of COVID. And then I do this also for, you know, my day-to-day life, which has been an interesting concept all around. But I think where Belmont stands, I think we have, you know, we have an incredible leader, our founder and CEO, Patricia Will. You know, she has her father actually living in one of our communities. And I think from a personal approach for her, she really challenged the organization to try to find ways to include that socialization, because that socialization piece, like John said, is so crucial, and it can create a lot of damage. And so for us, we're really obviously trying our best to follow all of the regulations, everything that is in place to try to meet that support of still including socialization. You know, for example, all of our communities across the nation, you'll find that the staff are 100% vaccinated and boosted, and same would go for a lot of our residents living in our communities as well. So, you know, asking a lot of those questions during that process is important, and what that looks like as you're choosing that community will be such a vital aspect to knowing, you know, what accessibilities you have within the community that you're moving into.
I also saw some creativity among communities where, you know, they would have somebody outside singing or playing music, and people could be on their balconies or open their windows to hear it. I saw people playing hallway games where people were in their doorways, and then the staff would, you know, and they would conduct some type of a game, or even eating, like people could have like a TV tray right in their doorway. So they were kind of eating with their neighbors when, you know, when it was at a point, you know, in 2020, when, you know, basically told don't go near each other at all. So I have to say, I did see a lot of creativity from communities to try to make it more, still keep some socialization. I know it was a lot on the staff, but I think most of the staff that I saw really rose to the occasion.
Yeah, and I think even from seeing it where my grandparents live, everyone had to be somehow, some way creative with how things were happening, because almost on a weekly basis from March 2020, every week changed. Everything looked differently the next week. And then that situation look different the next week. So finding those opportunities to blend in, I think that the organizations and the communities that did really well to meet that were those that were resilient and being able to be creative and being able to personalize things and just passionately, move along and meet the needs of their residents.
I agree. Well, okay, well, I know we're a little early, but I don't know that we have anything else to cover and there's no other questions.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to the three of you for being here and for this was so great, so informative. We super appreciate your time. Yeah, and I put the contact information for everyone in the chat. And if you have any questions as well, feel free to reach out to us at LT Senior Services as well.
And it's
Thank
on
you for letting us be part of this. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Such an honor to be here.
YouTube, right? So people can go and look up on YouTube LT Services and find all the webinars, right?
Yes, and everybody's going to get a follow-up email with contact information and the link to the YouTube recording and all of that.
Oh, that's great. Awesome.
All right, well, we will see you guys next month. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.